Okay, we're recording.
Thank you. Welcome to the September 26, 2025 meeting of the full school committee as well as a subcommittee, finance subcommittee meeting. Before I turn it over to Mariah, I just want to give a lot of thanks to Bella and Susan and Karen for all of their work on the questions that were submitted. They were not easy questions to get at. Some of them were not things that we track, nor should we track. But I just wanted to say thank you to your team before we get to that section. And I know Mariah is going to go through the minutes before we get there, but thank you for getting on that and getting that ready and just about in shape to go over to the ENR subcommittee. All right, Mariah.
Okay. First item on the finance subcommittee agenda before we go to the discussion of the document is approval of the September 10th, 2025 finance subcommittee minutes. And as Betsy noted a moment ago, there was one edit and that was distributed this morning. Can I get a motion for approval?
Yeah, I'll move to approve them with the one sentence edit.
Okay,
I'll second it.
thank you. Sarah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Carolyn, how do you vote?
She's not.
She's not on
She's
the
on the
subcommittee.
finance.
It's Donna, Jesse.
Oh, it's Donna, sorry.
And Donna's working. She's going to try to make it, but of course she's at work right now. So
Okay, gotcha. And Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, and I vote yes, thank you. So next item is the document that Bella and Susan prepared along with Karen and probably other contributions along the way. So thank you to everyone, as Val said. Bella, if you want to pull that up. Bella, what would be helpful to the group? Do you want feedback or just are you showing us this to show it to us? How do you envision this being useful?
Sure, I appreciate that. And I thank you for your comments of support, especially to Karen and Susan for creating the responses in this document. I also want to thank Malcolm and Margaret and Joe because there were some related questions to BEEP, to MECO, and just to some questions around space use. So I wanted to also appreciate them. I also want to acknowledge for all of us that this is a new process for any of us because again, several of us are new to our positions here at PSB, but also new to this process, new to these committees. And so we appreciate the patience that was given us while we resolve the answers to the questions that were being asked. I do want everyone to know that it was a lot of work to do, but also because we wanted to make sure the answers we offered were accurate. And so that required any one of us to be looking at records or seeking answers in areas that weren't created by us, but are in the archives or in our histories. We can speak more personally to FY25, FY26, some of us. But just so you know that our endeavor was to make sure that all the information is correct. And then we'll go from there. And so when you ask how best to do it, I'm going to offer, and you can always make comment because again, this is we haven't done this before. I think the committee members got a copy of the doc, and so I think it's best to scroll through. And then Mariah, do you suggest we scroll through the whole thing or how to take questions or comments? And I thought we'll take a record of the questions and comments, and I think Betsy will help us as well. So we may edit the document further. We are hoping that's essentially is the document that we would share with R&E. Also, we realized as we were preparing this for the Revenues and Expenditures Committee that it was such a substantial document. it didn't occur to us when we were looking at it initially that it should go before school committee, before it went to another body. And so I want to thank all the members that were able to make this meeting on short notice. And so it was, we didn't think about, it didn't occur to us at first, but we realized that it was something that we needed to do before we sent it off. Okay, so so I'll go ahead and share. Do you think it's best that we just?
Why don't, before you share, what I'm wondering is if maybe we take sort of big picture rather than like nitty gritty questions. If people want to make like very overarching comments and questions, and then maybe we can do some scrolling if people have detailed questions. What I'm going to ask people to do is if you have typo questions or like stuff like that, park it and email it to them. Let's not spend time on that at all. Let's really focus on like, first big picture, and then we can go through some of the questions. I think is the document, I'm trying to remember, is it 10 pages long, 9 pages?
It's
23. It's even longer than
it's
It
long.
was so well
Yeah.
written. It just flew by my eyes. It felt like a shorter document. But why don't we start with big picture questions and then we can maybe go down from there if that sounds okay to you, Bella?
So we should go through the whole doc or just?
I want to start with just have people give their sort of feedback generally on the document. And then I think maybe we will go through the document page by page and let people, if there's anything specific they want to comment. I don't want you to read things, but maybe just have people comment on if there's anything on a certain page so we can scroll through. But I don't want us to, we all have a limited amount of time and I want everyone to be very conscientious of the amount of time we have. So to the extent their comments can even reference multiple pages, like as we get
Okay.
along. So why don't you go ahead, Carolyn, with the first big picture comment? Oh, where'd you go? Oh, there you go.
Yep, I'm here. So I'm glad you said that because my question is a sort of big picture question. So I was working my way through the question document when the answers came. And I think read most of it. So I guess my kind of question to, I guess, Bella and the team is knowing the charge and the work of the expenditures and revenue study committee. And given these questions, what was sort of your approach? I mean, whatever the very specifics of the question and whether they referred to things that, we may or may not have information on. So one, when it came to things like that, like things that we might not track in the way that they, of course, understandably might have been asked by people who aren't school department people, were we going back and saying like, hey, can you clarify this? Because this is how we think of that. And this is how we do track that. And like, what are you really driving at? And then that's also like an overarching question, like, what is the sense of the approach of both the questions from the committee and then the responses from PSB in the context of collaborating on working towards an override ask? What was sort of the approach and to providing the answers?
I think to answer your question, it was clear to me that this group of members of the Revenues and Expenditures Committee, that they're charged with determining what they might recommend to the select board on whether there should be an override or not. And so they collectively created questions that they felt they needed answers to be able to make that decision. And so I think we addressed the questions in good faith that they were asked by the members of the committee for that purpose. So I think we just looked at everything in good faith and how we could best answer those questions. There were times where the way the questions were worded, we tried to read into what the question was asking for and providing the information we thought the question was asking for. So sometimes there were terms used that we thought, no, we think they're looking for this. So again, I think we approached everything in good faith, that these are questions being asked, and to answer them with the information that they were looking for. There are some times where we felt we didn't have the information in the way that would have been able for us to access to answer the question. We noted that when that was the case.
Yeah.
And so very occasionally, though, I think that happened very occasionally, we were answering what we felt were the substantive big questions around big cost drivers in the budget. I have to say that I want to be clear, we haven't been working on the responses since July nor August. We really needed to open schools first. And quite literally, we needed to make sure the buses ran on time before we could move on to these other things. But really, there are a lot of things around school opening that we needed to make sure. But it has been a concerted effort once we were able to turn our attention to that. All right.
Sure, of course. And sorry, I'm going to follow up quickly. And of course, we all assume that everything is approached in good faith, but by everyone. And so, I guess, and I'd be interested in hearing at some point, and I suppose we will, like, so my understanding of the committee, I suppose there's an if, but I guess I suppose it's possible that they won't recommend an override, but my understanding is that it's sort of a how much and what the justifications are for the public, not just the if. So so hopefully the questions were sort of ones that will be whether they're looking for kind of data to be able to make those kinds of determinations or answer questions about, I guess, efficiencies and stuff. But so I'll be really interested to hear the conversation.
Can I
Thank you.
follow up on that? I don't see any other hands up, and my big picture comment was, and I'm not sure this is a question necessarily for you, Bella, it might be for members of the Expenditures and Revenues Committee, or I guess you were there as well, is the very first section of the document that they provided, right at the top, talks about like need to have cost control, revenue opportunities, but then the questions were quite specific and didn't necessarily allow for you to openly discuss, for example, cost control measures or revenue opportunities, the things that they were requesting. So I'm just sort of curious whether there was any direction to you about or not about just answer the questions, or really we're trying to understand these top things through the lens of some of our questions. Do you understand what I'm trying to ask about the difference? Sort of, it seems like there's two different intentions.
Right. So the document that you see, we didn't change any of the wording
Right.
of the questions or the
Right.
preamble. So you can see where our responses are, and we wanted to maintain the integrity of the document as it was presented to us. So I think we were told that we should, well, anyway, it was our
You answered the
opinion that
question.
these are the questions, answer the questions. But I have said, alternatively, that once these questions are done, we would like the opportunity to address the bigger questions that you've alluded to as part of the process of building the budget for
Yes.
next year and forecasting.
And this is something that we've talked about in our other conversations. This is more or less the topics in the guidelines that we've been talking about.
Right.
Jesse, I see your hand. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bella.
Sorry. So we really hope to be able to present this and then be able to move forward to the next part.
Jesse, do you have a comment about the intent of sort of the background section versus the detailed questions?
Right. Yes. So just to follow up on what Bella said, the reason that that our little subcommittee that put the questions together from the revenues expenditure side left those 6 bullets at the top was to sort of play fair. In other words, what I made sure to say there is that this is what we asked from every department. And in a sense, you know, the school is called the school department. So it seemed very fair to share with Bella and the team the same focal areas that we were looking for, even though we said in the next paragraph that we're not expecting PSB to do comparison to comparable districts. We're not, you know, if there's a comparison they can do, yes, but if not, we're not requesting it. So what we wanted to do is just give them the parameters that we asked, you know, the same thing from Public Works and the same thing from Veterans Affairs, right? Was to ask the school district, these are the kinds of areas that Revenue and Expenditures is looking at. And we wanted them to know what we've asked other people so that they could place their answers in some context. We were not expecting them to necessarily have the same kind of need to answer all those 6 bullets as others, as the other departments did across the town. The second thing, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Second thing, I had 3 comments. The second one was that I want to be clear that this looks like a draft that's partially completed. In reading it through, there were areas that data have not been compiled yet. Nothing has been written on this at this time or something like that, which reads to me, if I'm sitting on the expenditure and revenue side, as here's some of a whole bunch of things have been answered, but there's still areas that have not been answered, and they weren't written in the sense, again, it was a lot to look at in the last 2 hours between everything else, but there were as I scanned through the entire thing, there were some areas that are have data to digest, and there are other areas that don't. It doesn't say we won't answer this, it just says we haven't done it yet. So I just wanted to ensure that we're not looking at this as the official response to expenditure and revenue. The third was, and I don't know if it's been sent already, I don't know. And then the third thing is that there was a question about DESI in there. I did send Susan before this meeting the report. I mean, I'm not sure, it wasn't difficult to find, but it said they weren't clear. And I'm not sure if we made a mistake in not giving them the clear link. I apologize for that, but she does have it now from page 6.
Go ahead, Bella.
So I had written Bernard to get clarification on what the reports were, because I thought that was the right person to ask. And so they are what they are there. I think our responses to the other questions, so address what might have been what they were looking for. I will say, actually, we consider this, we consider this complete. But we are open to your comments. We invested a lot of time, and we feel that these are complete.
Was it in the materials fee part?
Mhm.
Mariah, maybe I'm not sure I remember exactly, but Mariah, wasn't there something when school committee looked at it last time? There were 2 columns in the materials fee thing in the meeting when we voted on it. One had to do with like if your first child and if you have additional children, and there were different values or something like that.
There's a discount for a second child. There's not a different value necessarily.
A discount.
Yes.
Well, that would make the income different if you had 2 or 3 children in the system. Right? I mean, in other words, in terms of the data that were provided showed it only as one fee. But I thought that we voted on something that had like you say, a discount for additional children. So that might be a good addition.
Those are the kinds of things that I
Those
think
are
we should be
useful.
providing feedback on outside of this meeting, just like little factual,
Sure.
little details like that, or typos or anything like that. I think we can provide those kinds of things offline. Val, go ahead.
Thanks. I just want to say that Bella and team, in the context of the bullets and the way that you answered the questions, I thought that you did a great job of, when you could, talking about both potential revenues and where we had already sort of maximized revenue for instance, in the possibility of tuitioning in for some of our special ed programs and as a new revenue source, and then also the increases that we have made to beat tuition that really put us on the higher end of the public school early ed tuition. So I just wanted to call out that you did, I think, a great job of adding where you could comments on where the district has made efficiencies and increased revenue already, and where we still perhaps could do so. And then also, I read the responses that Jesse was referring to, as we just don't break down our kids by whether they're METCO students or a resident student for some of the special ed costs. And tell me if I'm misinterpreting that, but that's how I read that, as something that wasn't going to be able to be determined. Not in any easy way.
I don't know if confused is the right word, but there was multiple places where I think this is what you're alluding to, Val. It said like, the question had to do with student services, and the answer was more or less student services includes, guidance, nursing, as well as special education. There was multiple categories, and we can't provide that breakdown. I think that, I guess my question was, if the question had said special education instead of student services, would you have answered it differently?
We did produce information on whether students were on IEPs or not, and we even categorize, out of district, in district services. We did do that. So that is something that is more documented, and we broke it out by the groups. It was the other interventions or supports we just don't tabulate the students that way.
Well, I'll give one this example. Brookline's responsible for providing the required student services for materials fee students. Please provide the annual expenses incurred for these services in the past 3 fiscal years. So just so I'm clear, are we able to, I guess you're saying we can't fractionally attribute special education costs or any of those costs to any direct students like we can with tuition, because all of them are like, how do you count half an hour of a group pullout or something like that? Like, you can't really attribute costs like that. Okay, that's helpful. I think that it'll be helpful just to have that understanding of everybody up front. Are there other big?
Sorry, I have, and this might be a little bit detaily, but it might be appropriate, just responding to what you're saying, Mariah. But we can, when it comes to like one-on-one paras, for example, that would seem like something tabulable. Is that not right?
I guess but then it would be incomplete data, right? It would just be like one cost, but the question's really asking for
I'm
total
just saying
But
that if the question was asked, how many one-on-one paras are we employing? There's an answer to that. That's just sort of a fact answer that has a dollar amount connected to it.
All right.
But we're not. So obviously we track the number of students that are receiving different levels of interventions. But we're not tracking. The question's asking us to track it in a way and actually create databases that we don't have. And I think the preamble suggested that they weren't expecting us to do that. It was, so there was quite a bit of time invested in just actually pulling the data and cross-checking. But it's just not tabulations that we have ready to access.
Thank you, Bella. Donna?
Just to reinforce what I think Bella is saying and what I think you are saying, Mariah, some supports, tier 1 supports, are not special education supports. So not all tier 1 supports are special education supports. Special education supports are likely, can be likely monetized in some way. And I think Bella provided that information to some extent, but not all paras are special education paras. And not all services are being delivered under special education. So maybe if they are delivered under special education, that data is more likely to exist in some form. Or is that right? Is that right, Bella?
I don't think
even
that's
I'm
what we're
saying?
saying. I think it's that like that there is, as I'll reuse what Bella just said, there is no database that, for example, attributes 0.03 of teacher X's salary to certain students. So there's no actual calculation of like student X costs $4,000 in special education, because we do not ascribe specific fractions of effort. It would take like a whole fleet of people to do this sort of like work of actually linking instructional effort to individual students. And so like any data that would be provided would be like just not necessarily even accurate. Does that make sense, Donna?
Well, I was thinking more about grid services, but I don't even know that, look, I don't even know that it's what the return on investment is to providing such detailed information. So
yeah, that's
like,
my point of like
yeah.
the amount of work it would take you to accurately have that updated for like how much each student is using. If they are again, I give my example, if they are one student in a 5-student pullout group for speech once a week, like, does it actually make sense to do that math, or would we spend more money doing the math?
Right.
Having someone do the math, right?
Right.
So,
but we have some idea given the data, the table that Bella provided with how many students are in have special education services. Like a very rough number.
But I think that
Right.
part of this my interpretation of this document is that the Expenditures and Revenues Committee is interested in discovering whether there are excess costs associated with materials fee and METCO students.
Right.
And so to the extent that the data that was presented is aggregate, but it's not attributable to METCO students or materials fee students.
We do segregate out the special ed services, but just not the other generalized supports.
Right.
So
That's
you're
what I was
saying
trying to say.
Could
Yes.
come up with a dollar amount for or you can say you could calculate the minutes on their grids. Like when you say you segregate out the services, what does that mean?
Just that if they were in district, substantially separate, fully included, partially. It's in that
Oh,
chart.
right.
And we separated out by all and METCO and material fee students.
Yes, but not at like a dollar amount, I guess. If they wanted to say, oh, you could save X dollars by.
We would have to pull out, kid by kid and do that analysis. It's not in a database for us. We certainly
Yes.
have our kids in the aggregate.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Carolyn?
Oh, my sound's been on. Thanks. So, and I mean this to be helpful completely and not argumentative, especially because, again, like I've sort of with 1 year attended some of the committee meetings. I just read through these questions. I didn't even finish it. I didn't completely finish reading the answers. So Mariah, like I think you just said, the question was designed to tell us, or they were asking whether there are excess costs associated with materials fee students and METCO students. So if it's helpful, what I read this document, my take on this document was that the committee is trying to understand what the costs are. And it doesn't feel sort of that directed, and it makes sense to me that there's a need to understand like where what the big drivers are, and perhaps whether funds can be allocated differently. I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing, but, and I didn't read it as sort of looking for like super specific, granular data about specific students. But again, like my assumption is that everybody's rowing in the same direction on this committee and just trying to get a handle on what are the big drivers, and I don't know, are there going to be other ways to look at things, or what do we do with that? So I'm not sure what my point is exactly, but just as someone who hasn't been deeply involved, like I read this as a kind of just kind of general questions, for for people who aren't part of the school system to just get some data on what's going on.
Okay, if there's any more overarching questions, maybe we can just go to people's specific questions. If you want to pull up the document, Bella, I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna scroll page by page, and then it's gonna be, I'm not saying it's gonna be a total speak now or forever hold your peace moment, but we're gonna try to not dwell on page 1 or any specific page.
Agreed.
And again, this is not for you to correct typos or anything. This is like big picture.
So is this situated correctly for
Yeah,
you?
good.
Okay.
Yes, I think that's a good size for people to
You know,
read.
you've chosen the Luddite to share the screen, so there you go.
We can have someone else share if you want Betsy to pull it up.
No,
Whoever-
no, Betsy needs her hands free
Okay, okay.
okay. So
So go ahead, yep, just scroll, and then I'm gonna have people yell or call out. Don't try and raise your hand, but just call out if you'd like to make a comment on things, and then we'll stop for you.
I was gonna say on this section, Mariah, when someone's reading the first bullet in the public or from ERSC, they're gonna see this paragraph answer that doesn't say anything about the cost. So it might be helpful for Bella or someone editing it to put something at the beginning of the first answer saying see table below, just so that the first 3 bullets, by the time you get to page, if you're reading on page 1, there's no answer. Even for the second one, there's no answer. Then suddenly there's a table. So, or maybe the table could just be moved up, Bella, or something like that, just so that the question that says, where's the analysis undertaken of the costs associated, isn't a paragraph answer, but actually the costs. Just a suggestion there.
so we can say for the other bullet, see below, see chart
Yeah.
below.
Something like that. Yeah.
But there is no cost analysis in doing this. It's about cost avoidance. You would have to do, I guess you could take all the students that are in programs, and if you didn't have the program, what it would cost to send them out of district, then you would have to come with a range of out of district programs that would have been the alternative. I don't know how you want to do it, if you want to come up with that average. That is quite, so, I mean, that's a lot of work, but that would be how you would do it. So this is generally explanation of cost avoidance. If you really wanted to monetize it, again, you take all the kids, figure out what it would cost to send them out of district, plus the special ed tuition. Talking about big drivers in this part of the budget, we've shared the tuition numbers, and their special ed transportation. We've also made it clear that MECO students and material fee students actually they don't receive tuition services or special ed transportation. So in a way, I think the answer to that question may be implicit in that assumption.
I think that I'm going to agree with Jesse that the way the question is answered does not necessarily clearly respond to the question, and there might be an opportunity to tweak the wording a little bit while still keeping what you have in there, Bella, a little bit too.
So, okay. So
Yeah.
like putting in
I don't think we need to do it now. Let's do it offline,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I just think let's
offline,
put a
offline.
pin in this question to tweak the
Yeah.
wording a little
No,
bit.
I'm just trying to clarify what you mean, like maybe give tuition ranges, like if we didn't run this program, this many student and the tuition ranges are such.
Well, I
think
don't think
that-
we're looking at the avoidance. I saw this completely differently. I didn't look at it as avoidance. I think the question from expenditure to revenue is what does it cost to have out-of-district programs and how much are we spending on settlements? And, you know, one of the things Dr. Schmucker told us last year is obviously if we can avoid settlements, which are a big payout, then we reduce an exposure. So, it's just a clarity around what is our out-of-district placement, which are required to do because we can't provide the service in-house. We're not looking, I think, at an entire analysis of what would it look like if we brought everything that out-of-district does back into the district. What would that cost versus what we're doing now? I think it was, in my view, more of what you have in that table. This is what it cost 2 years ago, this year, 3 years this year, and then where we're budgeting for next year, so that there's clarity around it. So when someone looks at the second line that says claims and settlements is going to go from
Jesse, I'm gonna park you now. I think your point has been made and there can be some adjustment of the content here for clarity. Everyone else, if your hands are up to talk about the clarity of this section, we're not gonna keep talking about the clarity of this section. Point has been made. If you have something else you really need to say about the special education bit that you can see on the screen, the content in the table, hands up, but otherwise, and I'm gonna be brutal on cutting people off. Donna, go ahead. Oh, Donna's hand is down. Susan?
Okay.
Wait, no, my hand went down because you scared me, not because.
I am scary, consider, go ahead, Donna.
No, I'll be really quick. I
Okay.
think, and I'm gonna say this very respectfully, but I think the question was asked in a way that demonstrates that there maybe needs to be some education around how we get to the settlement part. So in my mind, the question isn't I guess what I would say, Bella, it's not necessarily how much would it cost to take the programs out and put people in out of district placements, but the reverse. Like if we built the programs in-house, this is how much it would cost us so that they don't have to go out of district. That's all I wanted to say.
Susan? You're on mute if you're talking.
3 bullets are interrelated, and in other sections, like for B.
I agree. Let's not talk about that bit right now. Let's rewrite it in a larger chunk. If you're saying,
I was
put
just
it
gonna
all-
say, just put it all together.
exactly, put it all together.
Right,
Carolyn,
Donna's
go
the
ahead.
one.
Apologies if this was said and I missed it. I was away for a second. Even though I'm on the school committee and I've probably received presentations about this, I'm embarrassed, but not too ashamed to say, I still don't fully understand what settlements refers to. The question here is asked in the first bullet under special education underlined settlement placements. I don't know if settlements is placements or settlements is when we pay for services that weren't received. So I wonder whether, sort of what someone else was saying, there might just be some for everybody who doesn't understand
Carolyn.
this granular, that would be helpful.
Right.
Sarah?
So I was thinking when Bella was speaking a second ago, that the way that the document was given to the school department, that there's a list of different questions, doesn't really allow for prioritizing what like the either the biggest cost drivers are or the easiest levers to pull to make impact. And I was wondering if I could invite Bella, after we have the conversation today, to consider putting in a paragraph at the beginning, at the introduction, that kind of sets up the story by evaluating what might be the most important part of the story. Bella, do you think that that would be helpful?
There might maybe there's a to me there's a lot of disparate questions, so I don't know if there's a cohesive story, but and so
Bella,
actually
I have
I
some
guess
thoughts on that I think we
yeah,
can take
and honestly I'm
offline.
sorry I put this part in and I'm sorry, we should just said C chart below.
Yeah, that's one.
So
Really
we're reading the questions quite literally. It says costs associated with our out-of-district and settlement placement. So we interpreted that.
Let's
how
not
are
get
you
into the
getting-
words of it, Bella. I hate to cut you off and don't take it personally, please. But we're never going to get through this if we don't keep going. And I think
well,
that
I absolutely do not have clarity on how you want us to address this part then.
I
And
think
maybe
I
you
do,
can tell
though.
me
Yeah,
offline.
I can tell you offline. I think we have
Right.
a good sense of what we need to
Yep.
do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I am frustrated because honestly, I want to get past the questions and I really want to be working on forward thinking. And
Yeah.
so I want to be clear, like we want to be done with this so we can go on to the real work.
Yes. Keep going.
Okay.
Yep. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Again, if anyone has something they really want to weigh in on, they can.
I'm just moving till you tell me to
One comment on this one is that I'm surprised that the year-on-year revenue information that we don't have that because we file the paperwork. So this should be something that's available through OSS because I thought OSS submits it to the third-party processor.
Some of that, Mariah, is when does it get posted? And then when is it showing up in Munis? And there's a gap between the two. So I don't want to publish information that is in one record that nobody else sees and then have them look in Munis or an official report and see a different number.
I would still think that PSB should be very clear. This is a lot of money. And
It-
even if it hasn't, you can say, I don't know if the revenue has posted, but this is what we have claimed. I think it's important to be very clear about that, but it's significant and it's, I think, worth noting and not letting it go by unnoted here.
moving.
For tuitioned in students, I thought that 2 of our programs had already been approved. I thought that the Winthrop House and ALC have been approved. Is that? Though I know we're not tuitioning in, but I think it would be good to, we're not just evaluating it, right? We've actually gone as far as getting the approval from the state.
No, that isn't accurate. On Winthrop House, we have done all the beginning preliminary steps with the state. We've costed it out. With the change of leadership, we put it on pause in terms of moving forward with actually tuitioning, beginning the process. So we don't have the final pieces from DESI for Winthrop House, and ALC, we're beginning that process. So we haven't finished either one of those.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
On this one about the Special Education Stabilization Fund, I was surprised to see that we have a neutral stance on it because we had a meeting as a committee in the spring possibly where we had expressed interest. So it seems to me like I was just surprised because at our previous meeting, this was not the discussion.
Right, yes.
So I wouldn't have been there in the spring.
Right.
Right. So this would be, I would say that represents the administration's stance at this time. It's a neutral
And-
stance.
Andy, you had your hand up. No, you don't want to? Okay.
Not anymore, so no.
Okay. I think it's something that, well, we can talk about it offline. I think that there's maybe we're on record as being interested in it and it sounds like things have changed. So maybe there's a little more subtlety to some of how this is framed. Okay, keep going. Jesse, is a quarterly frequency more attainable than a monthly one? What was that referring to? Was it referring to the report or the meeting of the team in the prior message? I didn't understand what that was about. The staff seems to have taken it as in preparation for the quarterly report, but I was confused because if you scroll up a little bit more, Bella, see how it says, please outline the process for these review meetings. It seemed to me it was talking about the internal staff meetings, but those are already happening monthly.
At least monthly.
I believe maybe the bullets were moved to the left as if they're like separate questions. I think these are all underneath something higher up, but I think the intent was Susan comes before the full school committee once a quarter with financial updates on about the budget. And I thought this was the question about whether that could be produced monthly, the financial report. And I think Susan had mentioned, given the amount of effort it takes and the work that it takes to put it together and waiting for things to post and things like that, the quarterly would be more accurate.
I
That was
see.
something-
So you're saying that one actually belongs to the one below? If you scroll down a little bit, Bella, monthly report to school committee, you're saying that is bi-monthly more appointment, is quarterly frequently more attainable actually belongs to the next question down?
It maybe I'd have to look at the original document again. Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Because
would
otherwise
just-
you're right. It doesn't relate to the one above.
Okay, I would just highlight too that this document says PSB has placed quarterly reports. That's not a new practice. So, but this reads as if it's new, and I really want us to be clear to the committee that we are already having quarterly financial reports. And so I would just make sure that that one is emphasizing this is a long-standing practice.
Yeah, I had flagged that too. Thank you.
Yeah.
It should just be a fact, meaning rather than like a new proposal.
Exactly, exactly. If there's no more comments, we can keep going.
So on that one, I guess I was confused and should have put the link in there, Mariah. If you just Google DESI report grants Massachusetts, poof, the Excel spreadsheet pops out and you can subset the Brookline part out. I sent it to Susan at 5 to 4. So she has it. That's where the 4292,991 is for, FY24. So it's that part's easily accessible.
We just didn't know what it was.
Right, but no one asked me either. No one asked any of us. If it went to Bernard, it didn't get.
I'm sorry, I asked Bernard because I thought I asked Bernard. So
No, in fact, the only reason you got the questions, Bella, at all was because I took the final document, and rather than having it come from me and school committee /ERSC, I sent it to Bernard as the chair to then send to you, so that there was like a official from the head of the committee to the head of the district.
Sure, I didn't know that because it came to me from Bernard, so I didn't know that's how it happened.
Right, that we wanted to do it the appropriate method and not just have a member of the expansion revenues shoot you the questions.
Well, now the good news is this is why we're doing this process so that
Yes.
we have some.
Right, so I mean,
We
in
can
this
tweak things
regard,
as needed.
yeah, in this regard, Bella, so Susan has the report now in her inbox, and perhaps a little bit of analysis of that report may give you an opportunity to give the team an opportunity to respond to this question.
I believe the data actually is already given elsewhere in this report because really the expenditures for out of district, I think, are basically going to be in circuit breaker if that's within those. So it's probably pretty straightforward.
So you're
Because you're
saying,
asking for in district versus out of district.
right, so both of
But
those.
I think it's actually already written elsewhere, but we can keep going.
Yeah, sure.
Tell me to slow down if you want.
I thought just that this information in this chart actually would be very helpful to move up towards the top in the larger discussion of special education, but we can take all that offline. It's a very helpful data point.
Yep. So, yeah, just up just slightly. So up, yeah, okay, fine. No, that's fine. Where beep starts. So like 10 paragraphs up somewhere, it said see below for the B budget documents, and then it says here, please provide the budget documents. Are they still lower down somewhere, or is there a link in there that we missed or something?
There's so it's all collected down here.
So are those,
It's all the financial information that was sought.
right, I guess the question maybe from, maybe someone else from expenditure and revenues might have a question about this. In other words, a real budget document that shows, you know, here are our costs, here are our, you know, expenses, here are our revenues, here's our net, here's the staff cost, here's, you know, the entire, like a budget. This is like disparate information here about B, but
You're
Actually-
wanting a breakdown of not where the funds, the revenue sources, you want an actual breakdown of the expenses.
yeah, I think that's what, I mean, I don't want to speak on behalf of the entire expenditure and revenue committee, Mariah,
Sure.
but I think that's what
Is
the
being requested.
members are requesting, yes.
Yes. And that's in the budget book, at least for budgeted expenses. So
Maybe that could be brought over into here. I mean, you know,
yeah.
that's one possibility. Mhm. Yeah, thanks for that clarification.
I'm sorry, I'm also writing down notes. So
Carolyn, go
scroll-
ahead.
Scroll down. Okay.
Carolyn, I think, has a question. Wait one sec
Yeah,
while she
quick
tells her.
question. Sorry, I'm sort of trying to keep up here. If I go all the way back to like page say 6, for example, where there are tables with enrollment numbers, are those from last school year or this school year?
You're talking about the one that's below? The one with the blue
Say,
header
for
right there?
example, just because I'm looking on page 6 where there's a grand total, and I think that was
Yeah, those two
Right.
tables match in the summary, so. But,
You're asking if that's numbers for this school year or last school year?
correct.
yeah, I had the same question too. I wasn't sure which year these numbers refer to.
I have to ask the team to respond.
I'm not sure on the upper table, the lower table is early September numbers.
They
2020.
match.
Yeah, they
So,
match.
yeah,
I'm saying I don't know the special education information, like
but they
Karen.
match. So if
answered.
your lower numbers are
Right.
I'm
September,
saying the last line in the upper table came from the information I shared on the September numbers. Karen would have to answer where the special education data, what date that is from. I'm not
oh, I
sure.
see.
This
Okay,
special-
but generally speaking,
Hold on, wait, Carolyn, Karen's gonna answer.
the special education numbers are current.
Okay.
I think it would be
So the-
helpful then just to have another column or something that dates this so that other
Sure.
readers know.
Yep, sure.
For each row and for the blue table. That would
Let's
be,
go back to page 13.
yes,
Sorry.
thank you.
I'm not done. So
Oh.
thank you, Karen. And then, so Susan, you're saying also the lower table with the blue band on top on page 6, those are current numbers as you have them.
Not current, but early September.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay,
okay.
Yeah.
Alright. So I'm going to 13.
yeah, I think that's where we were.
Yes.
Keep going.
Okay.
Could you just back up half a page, please? So in this section here, the cost supported by the grant, there is no cost number provided though, right? This is grant per pupil, money spent per pupil from the grant, but are there costs? What other costs are supported by the grant? Is that answered in this answer? I mean, is it reflected there?
It's in this paragraph.
So, for example, the second sentence, Metco salaries and transportation is the cost.
Yes.
Okay. And the literacy specialists and the math specialists, et cetera.
Great. I think it's a complete list of the categories.
And that tracks back to the Metco grant, like
Yeah.
that's in
Yeah.
the budget book.
Yes. And-
Okay, great, thanks.
One thing that might be helpful is if you want to flag, I know this question doesn't necessarily address this, but the size of the Metco Special Education Supplement Grant, and any prior year funding that we've gotten from that. I think there was a question that was specifically Metco and special education, and maybe flagging that is the size of, like, I want to say it's 400,000 for the entire state. And applications we made might be helpful. I
Okay,
think that data is pretty readily available,
thank
very
you.
readily available, yeah.
Should I keep going?
Please, thank you.
So, oh, okay. Are the, for the blue that just went off the top there? Yeah, that one. The annual expenses incurred, these 23, 24, and 25 numbers, it just says we're not going to answer it at this moment. We don't have the capacity to dig out those numbers. Is that
This is
correct?
the same question we talked about extensively earlier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are generalized services that are listed. Student services is beyond special ed. So
Correct. Like guidance. Yeah, sure.
may I make a comment on this one about the comparable programs? More districts were contacted, not everyone responded. So if it feels, but I think many districts don't charge for the don't charge for this, I don't know, the privilege.
Well, it's a real benefit actually, right?
It's a great retention tool. It
Yeah.
is, yeah, so most districts actually don't charge for it.
I think that the additional context you just provided, A, that you reached out to more, and B, that it's a retention tool might be valuable information to actually include in writing.
Oh, I agree, Mariah. I was going to say just that.
What page is it on? I just want to make the note. What page?
Oh, great. Susan, you're taking notes.
17. Yeah.
Is there, sorry, I'll raise my hand. I'm sorry, because I didn't get this far and I'm trying to speed through. Is there anything in here with respect to materials fee that sort of addresses how we set the fee? Like what the fee supports?
Yes, it's above, I believe. It says that it supports, there was somewhere here where it says that it pays for some staff position, I believe.
It's right underneath where the tuition numbers I provided are. And I've
Oh,
taken
yes, 8 teacher salaries, yeah.
and the amount of money that it offsets in our budget right now.
So the materials fee funded 8 teacher salaries. Okay, thank you. What I actually meant was, and maybe this is in writing somewhere in policy, but how the fee is set, like, because we know that, it's called the materials fee. So we assume X number of dollars is spent by the district on materials for a student, or just what does the fee represent?
I thought
There
it was
is
kind of
no-
addressed elsewhere, where it just said that it started out at $300 way back when, and then it's been our practice every year to raise it by 2 or 3%. It's not like we go back and look at how much is the cost of paper this year. It's just sort of like any other fee goes through finance, and we typically raise it by 2 to 3%, right? There have been
Well,
proposals to
to
raise
be
it by more.
fair, I did an analysis of costs
Mhm.
and the school committee did not.
Right, but we didn't end up acting on your analysis, but rather
Correct.
more
I'm just
according
saying,
to
you're right,
tradition.
that actually what happens is, but someone has done an analysis and it just was
Yeah.
not accepted.
Is it
So there's
okay?
nothing in
Oh.
our policy that, I thought that there was some description of sort of,
How it's calculated? No. We set the
yeah,
fees. We set the fees every year for everything.
and it's, I don't love this word, but so it sounds like what you're saying is other than it being sort of raised by some increment, it's sort of arbitrary in terms of what you're paying for.
I actually, well, the analysis, I don't like waste too much time on this, but the analysis showed it's actually pretty close to the non-salary costs historically. So it's until very recently during COVID years, it was actually pretty spot on, and I would say it probably still is. But I have not updated my analysis since I did it 3 years ago or 2 years ago.
And Mariah, did I see upstairs it was like 40 students or something, or did I not remember that?
40 on
Upstairs, you mean at the beginning of the document? Yeah, I think it's at
No.
40.
On this right over, yeah, it didn't say
No,
40.
40 is students in special education, I believe, from materials.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, so there are many more that are, how many require in-district sped? Okay. But to support 8 teachers, you got to have many more children and, materials fee. Okay, got it.
Remember, it's not just teachers eligible for the materials fee
staff.
application.
Okay. Yes, staff as well.
But
Yep.
town staff as well.
Town staff as well.
Town staff as well, not just school staff.
Right.
So it's a retention tool across the board.
Mhm.
For this one, this is the revenue. I just think you should be clear that this is the revenue and expenses to the account, not necessarily all expenses that are
Yep.
that are applied to that are relevant to summer programs and extended days. So I just think that it's not necessarily presented clearly. These are just the charged expenses.
You have that, Susan?
Yep.
Okay.
And is it correct when I looked at this earlier that they flipped in 25 and estimated for 26 in terms of revenue being more than expenses? That's correct, right? In other words, that it switched 22, 3, 4 expenses were lower. We were making, well, no, I guess even in 23 there was a huge disparity between the expenses and the revenue. I see. Okay.
And some of the issue there is just when the revenue was collected. So there was revenue collected in 24 that was attributable to 25 that was attributable to 24 and 23 because
Oh.
nobody followed up on the billing from those years. So that we've gone through this process of trying to collect prior receipts from some of our renters. Also on the expense side, because there was a balance that had accumulated, you can see the revenue in 22 was higher than the expense. That had
Yes.
been true in other years. It had accumulated a balance, and in 23, the year before I arrived, that fund balance was spent out when the 452,915 was charged against that fund. So when we started in 24, when I started, there was appreciably no money in that revolving fund.
I think it would be helpful too to make it clear that it is a revolving fund. It's not
Yes.
this is running into deficit in years where expenses exceed revenue. Go
Right.
ahead, Donna.
Wait, am I muted? No, I'm not.
Nope.
Okay. Sorry, I'm on my phone and I can't see all the buttons. I was just going to ask at some point, Mariah, if you can share that analysis with me offline. I'd be interested in that.
Sure, it's posted on the materials page of the.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
it's even public. It's not like I have to share something private. It's public from a couple years ago. I think it might be helpful too. The revenues program, like the revenue, the question here on school facility rental revenue does not necessarily answer the question because it's asking about allocating.
Right.
And I think you need to make clear like that it's not allocated. It goes to PSB for the building use.
Yep.
Okay. And I also think that, I think you talk about this, they didn't ask this, but you talk about rec, which I thought was really helpful to contextualize building use. Or I thought you did, but now I
I
don't.
did.
see
Yeah,
it
I'm
here.
looking
You did.
at.
It was somewhere.
You just mentioned it.
And it was really helpful, but I almost think like it belongs here too, or a reference like, hey, look at this information about like building, as long as we have this arrangement with rec, which is, you know, supportive of town activities, it doesn't mean that the buildings are completely free. They're quite busy at zero rent.
Yes.
So that's important to note.
I think I might have done that under building utilization, but it was
It
kind
was
of,
somewhere.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was tough, you know, it's when it's not your questions and you're trying to translate it in the way that we understand it and know it in a visceral way. Sometimes it's difficult to where to place certain content to answer their question, but not, you know, go down a rabbit hole that people would find irrelevant. So
Of
I felt it
course.
was important.
It's
to
down at the end. It's down at the end though, Susan, where
Okay, so we'll
we're
get
talking
there.
about like additional things. 22, 23 had page 23 has
So,
it.
We'll
so
get
if
there
we,
then.
if the rec department has the, you know, sort of first call on the spaces, then if we're doing that in an efficient way, then we are able to offer the spaces to paid users that want to rent it. And I think that that is something that
Right there.
we need to show that we're trying to do in order to bring in revenue.
Yes, can you go back up, Bella, to 17? And Donna, is that an old hand up or a new hand
No,
up?
no, that's a new hand about page
Okay.
18.
18, sorry, go ahead.
Susan, are there expenses that are reflected in that expense column that we would be incurring whether or not extended day and summer programs were running? Or might there be? I mean, I know they like is.
Yeah, well, we allocate out, so let me make sure I understand your question. Your question is, if we were not renting our buildings out or using them for anything beyond the schools, would we still incur these expenses? Is that what
Right.
you're asking?
Yes. Or if, right, if it, right, exactly.
Yeah. So,
Or some of these expenses. I know it's
maybe a
to the
small
best of your
portion-
ability.
Yeah, perhaps a small portion of the custodial cost, but for the most part, the overtime, we're charging 150,000. Our overtime expense is 270. So it's not all of our overtime. The overtime would happen after, you know, school hours or standard hours of operation. And so we were just trying to attribute the expenses as, you know, closely as we could to what those costs are. I don't know if we don't use our schools at all for rec or anybody else. It would be hard for me to say off the top of my head exactly
Right.
what our staffing profile would be and expenses for just school purposes. But I feel it's reasonable to say two, and at least 150,000 in the overtime.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Did I go? Where do you want me to go, Mariah?
Hang on one second. I want you to stay here. I just want to say that really when I look at this, the information that's provided here does actually belong more in the building usage because this revenue is not generated from it's partially generated from extended days, but it is not fully generated from extended days, and the expenses do not, as Susan's pointing out, they're not fully attributable to that either. So I think the answer to this question is really that we don't have necessarily a strict analysis of extended day and summer program costs only.
Right, as it relates to the opening statement, these programs utilize school property. That's what I'm saying. It's really hard to unpack when you're trying to answer the question exactly what the nature of the question is. I didn't find connection on some of these in a
But I
way.
think that the section on building utilization, this content is really like a preface to the building utilization conversation. So I think it needs to be clear, like the implication is that this revenue and these expenses are attributable there, because that's the question. They're saying the costs associated, but we don't have the information on the costs associated with extended day and summer programs. Like there's a much more nuanced conversation that needs to happen, and again, the facility rental revenue, it's like not related to those programs necessarily. It's related to the building to the revolving fund, but that has nothing to do with, it has only partially to do with extended day and almost nothing to do with
Nothing
summer
to do with summer
programs.
programs, which is why
Yeah.
it was confusing. And most
Yeah.
summer programs we're not charging anything for, except for a little bit at the BHS. That's why I'm saying it's when the author of the question is writing, they have something on their mind, but we're not privy to what they mean by what they're saying. So it is subject to a bit
I
of
think,
interpretation.
yeah. I mean, I have some ideas for how to adjust this too, that I think would make it a little clearer. Again, because you have a
Right,
compelling narrative, you've just divided it up into ways to try to answer it, but I don't think
it was hard.
yeah, it was hard. Exactly. It was hard. Let's keep going. For these ones, do you want to, you probably don't, but like there is the old data that was public during our last negotiations, but it's kind of irrelevant at this point.
Yeah, I think so much has changed. We did compile a sort of spreadsheet in 2022 when we last engaged in collective bargaining with the BEU, at least for the first question, the steps and lanes.
Yeah.
Not so complete for contractual requirements. But I think it would probably be misleading to put it
That's
in
what I
now,
was thinking
just
too,
because we
yeah.
have a new contract. Almost everyone else does too. So
Yeah.
we're going to be doing that work again, of course, this coming year as we prepare for another round of collective bargaining.
Right. In the next
Donna?
couple of months. Yep.
To that end, I was just going to say, I don't remember if it's in this section, but it might be useful to mention when the current contracts expire and when we go into a new.
Yeah, that might be exactly helpful to say
Yeah.
because we're going into negotiations like
Mhm.
that hasn't been happened yet, but
Yep. We can add that.
okay. And again, I think some of that other information might be nice as a preface to this section. It's not necessarily answering their questions exactly, but it's in the right section here. You have data, Farah's point, showing room utilization, not the classroom analysis that I think you have here where you said some classrooms were available, but for example, percentage of the day that spaces are used. I don't know if the system used to reserve rooms allows for that. But here it says analysis on room utilization. I'm just curious whether we can say to Sarah's point that like I'm making it up, but from 3 o'clock, let's say 3 to 8 p.m. in the afternoon, we use X percent of space, and of that, half of it is rec and half of it is not, and the other half is paid. Do we have any data on that or no? No.
I don't really. And to Pella's point earlier, when we read the preamble, it was asking us not to create data we don't have,
Yeah.
rather to provide information that we did. So it's not that, none of this can be done. It's a time commitment. And to Bella's point, the real work is in projections, getting ready for contract negotiations and being able to do some comp information, look at efficiencies, and that is really where our work lies. So we didn't, as much as I could, and with what information I had, I tried to be as thorough as I could, providing as much data as I had available to me without having to go in and take any to create new analysis for this response.
So so do you have even like anecdata? Is there a sense, I guess, Mike, like could you or Joe come up with a sense of whether there is still time that could be scheduled in buildings, or are we close to sort of natural capacity? Obviously, no one ever hits 100%, but if a building, I don't know what a building is maxed out at 80% or like what's considered highly efficient. Do we have any sense of that or no?
I don't have,
Okay.
I don't even want to throw
That's
out
fine.
some thoughts. And the other thing too, Mariah, is in with our internal conversations around the rec department's desire to use our facilities in a more substantive way. I don't know what that's going to look like in the end, right? The town seems to have a higher need than we're fulfilling now, and there is some thought that between school and rec department, that it could push out some of our ability to rent space out to other parties. Because they
Yes.
would want more prime time, and, you know, the same prime time that a renter might want. And so I'm not really sure how that's all gonna play out.
Mm-hmm.
That's the sense, I can say that's the sense that I have after talking to, you know, Hal and the coordinators and all staff that are involved in, you know, kind of managing our space and using our space internally. And the partnerships that we have currently.
Understood. Donna? You're on mute, Donna.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to find the stupid mute button on my phone. Oh, I wanted to say about that specific question, the one about building occupancy, or I can't remember exactly how it was phrased, but it reminds me of conversations that were happening during campaign season around like the percentage of classrooms that were unused in particular buildings. So I don't know if that's sort of what they were getting at, but if that is the conversation that is echoing in people's heads, and that's what precipitated that particular question. And I know it's hard for us to know that, but I think we maybe should meet it more head on. I don't know how, but
I think that the problem is that the questions were pulled apart because they were talking about after school use and during school use. They're not realizing that actually it's a more complicated question,
Right.
which is why I think we can adjust the writing a little
Okay.
bit to reflect that the actual question asked is really about after school use versus during school use.
Got it.
So yeah.
And I think that's the other hard part, because after school, we use our schools after the standard school day for school purposes. And people think that school is, let's say, from 8 to 3 or whatever the
Right.
hours
So-
are, right? But we have all kinds of programming after school that's you know, co-curricular, athletic, and other such programming. So it's really hard to define what's school versus non-school.
But I don't think even the question is school versus non-school, it's used versus unused.
Mhm.
So, right,
That's
like,
right.
and
That's
so
right.
if it's used for a public good, or it's used for a revenue generating private good. Like those are the two. And either way, people say those are both acceptable uses, but that like unused or less used than it could be. Obviously, understanding that there's some level of like normal amount of not used due to transition times and whatever. But I think this is a helpful conversation, and the content is here, or you've just articulated some of it. So that's really great.
Right. So Mariah, with the framing that you just gave, I think maybe actually I'll talk to you about it offline, because I'm wondering if we can answer the question, and we'll talk later. Well, I have to get what's in my head
Yes,
on a piece of paper.
On that question, Don, I was thinking if the regular person, not only on our expenditure and revenue committee, but off the street, you know, parents or whatever that say, oh, there's so many open class, you know, so many empty classrooms we're not using. I see that answer on the top of the prior page. Yeah, that one. Yes, except you're right there. Yes, except for the 6 classrooms at Driscoll. That's the answer to the question.
Right.
During the day, when class is in session, if you go to Lawrence, there are no empty classrooms whatsoever. I mean, you know, everything's used every day. And you go right to every school, you'll only find Driscoll with 6 empty classrooms. That's how I interpret that answer for the public. So
Yes.
obviously, I think, you know, as Susan mentioned, after, you know, 2:30 and after 1:30 something on Fridays, you know, the number of rooms being used goes way down. And I think that's part of the challenge, is to understand how potentially we could use that as a school department to increase revenue by increasing utilization of that open space.
I think the other thing, yeah, that I want to point out though, is that there's this, I think, idea that we can raise revenue without raising expense. And so what we have found, even with the rec department, is that there's no supervision while people are using our space. So our space and classrooms and teachers complain about their supplies and materials and equipment being used and damaged and then not available for school use on the next day. So if we're going to become a center after school for community and private use, then you almost have to have a whole management structure to support that. So yeah, it's not just.
And again, I think it's
basic-
helpful to talk about that too, right? It's not just raw, it's
Yep.
not just the gross revenue. There's a
Correct.
significant associated expense. And it's not just like keeping the lights on, it's really just like, it's a large public building. It can't be just
Right.
left empty and unmanaged.
It's also some very expensive school personnel, sometimes the principal having to go answer the door. If the building was just closed and a parent shows up to try to find the sweatshirt that was forgotten during the day, the building is closed. But if the building has programs going on in it, then, the public comes to the door and the, principal or whoever has to go answer the door. So there's a lot of expenses, yes, that you don't see.
I think I'm gonna close the meeting at this point unless there's anyone who's desperate to say anything at this point. And with the offer to adjust things a little bit, if you want to send me the document, and then you can have the last crack at it, but I have some ideas on it that I think will work. And then we can
Do you want me to stop sharing?
sure, if you don't mind. And I just want to say thank you to you all because it's so clear how much effort, again, how much effort went into this document. Really, really significant content there. Donna, do you want the last word?
Oh, yes, thank you. I actually also wanted to say thank you to Bella and Susan and Karen and everybody else who worked on that. I have to say that before yesterday, I think we received the document. I hadn't looked at the questions. And when I did look at them, I had some of the same reactions. And this is not meant to be a dig or anything negative about the people who put the questions together, but they are hard to answer because there's not a clear understanding of like the school operations or certain functions of the school. And so I think that added extra angst and extra, I don't know what the word is, but I guess my point is just to say thank you because I can see where it was difficult.
Bella, go ahead. Now you get the last word. The last word.
Okay. Again, I thank the team, and I want to remind everyone that 3 of the 4 corners are interim. None of us have been through this cycle, and so Susan remains the anchor. And so while we tap into her capacity on this, we're not able to tap into her capacity for other things about moving forward. I want to remind everyone too that at the central office level, we're working with fewer staff. And we are doing our working hard to keep the standards high, be responsive, give quality answers, give accurate answers, but we are working with fewer staff. And so
Diane Johnson left us.
sorry.
Is Diane Johnson no longer?
It's
Why don't we
actually,
let Bella finish and you can.
yeah. So anyway, I just appreciate your support, but also we're trying to do the best we can. And
It's amazing. Yep.
and I appreciate what everyone is doing. And we do really want to be able to move forward.
Yeah, thank you.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Mariah.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Hold on.
Yep.
Would someone just in terms of staff, I don't think it's inappropriate to ask in terms of staffing that school committee sort of liaises with. Is Diane's position?
Actually, I think that is a personal question, not for this agenda.
Oh, okay. I just
Okay.
was wondering why we weren't seeing her. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Bye-bye.